All right, everybody. Welcome to another Ask a Dev Unreal Engine live stream tutorial. My name's Kevin, and the crew is already helping me out. I love this crew. Apparently, I get my weekly reminders to remember to press the start button as well as unmute, which is fantastic. I love the sense of humor around here. Before we get going, today we're continuing our reticle component and setup for targeting. Today is pretty much going to be all about materials. We're going to build our reticle a few different ways. There's a couple things that I want to explain about how materials work that will hopefully be helpful even for people who are just starting out, and for those who are already material maestros, getting back to basics and doing the base forms, whether it be Kung Fu or grammar or whatever. It's always good to review. So if you see stuff I'm doing, as always, I have no problem with you all giving me feedback and letting me know either what I'm doing is not clear or completely wrong. That's fine too. Before we get going, a huge shout out to a couple of our newest Patreon members. We have M. Smith, Sinstero, and Merrick. Super huge thanks for supporting the channel and making all this possible. Everybody else who continues to help in Discord, amazing community in Discord, people crushing in there. I got to figure out good ways to say thank you to all you all, but it's so great to have a good community in there. And as always, thanks for spreading the word. With that, the way this goes, we're going to go through the tutorial. If you all have questions along the way that have to do with this tutorial, we'll try to answer those. I'll try to make clarifications. If there's something that's a more generic Unreal thing and we have time at the end, I can try to answer those. Otherwise, throw those in the forum questions in Discord, and we will try to get to those. All right. Also, yes, don't forget to join Discord. So, Rusty, Off the Rails, Ivanhoe, it's good to see you all. Spectra, PBM, T1, Jordan. Step 1, welcome to a stream. Very cool. All right, here we go. Let's get going. So, like I said, we're going to be talking about materials today. And the interesting thing about materials is I came from, for example, a film background. So for me, materials was pretty straightforward, right? It was RGB, red, green, and blue, and an alpha channel, which controls the transparency for those of you that are completely new. And whether you came from film or Photoshop or, editing stuff, that's kind of what materials were. But materials in Unreal and game dev is not a two-dimensional thing. It's not a three-dimensional. It's not even four-dimensional. It's like five-dimensional. So what we're going to be talking about today are all the dimensions of materials. We've got RGB plus alpha. So that's kind of four weird dimensions in and of it by itself. Then we also have UV space, which is another 2 dimensions. Then we also have the use of materials in game in 3-dimensional space using world positions and stuff like that. We're not going to get into all that today. I'm just explaining how deep the rabbit hole of materials goes. Okay. Then on top of that, we also have time. Materials can also work in time. So there's like many dimensions to materials in game dev, and specifically in Unreal Engine. So today what we're going to do is we're going to build our reticle, the visual for our reticle, the easy way. Then we're going to do it the procedural way, and then we're going to take the learnings from the procedural way and reapply it to the easy way so you can see what we're doing. So with that, let's go. SWAT team, welcome to the stream. All right, so as a recap, everybody, let me make sure that our screen sharing is working. It looks like it. If you recall where we were, is we have our reticle. It is working. Our characters are walking for us, and we can move it around. However, it's a giant box. We want to change this box to be something pretty, something that makes sense. And you can adjust it and do whatever you want as we go. So to start with, what we're going to do is we're going to do this the classic. We're just going to make a texture. We're going to do this in Photoshop. Now, whether you use Photoshop or whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's just go ahead and let's make this really quickly. Let's go with a rectangle tool. And we have round the corners, 4 pixels. That's cool. Let's see if this is going to be what I want. All right, that's not quite what I want. Let's try 12 pixels on the corners. Oh, that's 12 pixels on the width. And then the corners, let's try 8. Let's try doubling these. 8, 8. There we go. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay. And then let's take this and let's move it over so it's kind of aligned. All right, now we have a red reticle that we're going to use as a reticle. I'm going to actually change this to white. And I'm going to explain why we're going to use white in a second, and I'm going to get rid of my background. So it might be, let's give ourselves a dummy background just so that you all can see what's happening here as we make these changes. Okay, so this is what our reticle looks like. The reason I've chosen white is because we can use white to change the color to be whatever we want. All right. Now, the other thing that we're going to do is let's just start here. Let's get rid of this black background, and then we're going to take this and we're going to export this, and we're going to export this as a PNG file. I'm going to do the legacy style. I'm going to change this to PNG because that way we have transparency. I don't need 24. Oh, it keeps clicking 24. Transparency check, all those things. 512 by 512, that's great. Let's save this out and let me figure out where we are right now. I'm gonna have to think of a good place to keep source art for these demo projects, because if we want to give you all the source files for Patreon members, I need to make sure that we have those. So this is gonna be users. Oh, no, cancel. Users. Kevin. Documents. My goodness, this is painful. Where's Unreal Engine? Oh, that's right. They started putting all this stuff on the OneDrive. Thanks for that. Unreal projects, and this one is our target reticle tutorial. So here's our target reticle. I'm gonna make a folder in here, new folder. I'm gonna call it source art, and then let's make a folder in here. We'll call it UI just for cleanliness, and we're going to call this our square 512 512. I'm just gonna go 1512 because I know it's a square. So let's just save that. Okay, so now we've saved out our reticle image. Now what we want to do is we want to input this into our target rock, into a material, so that we can get this not to show up as a white box. So we just need to import this. I'm gonna make a textures folder in here that we're going to import this to. Actually, let's call this, yeah, we'll keep this. We'll call this textures. And inside here, let's import our reticle. Unreal Projects, target reticle, source art. This is great. Here we go. Here's our 512. Open. Okay, so when we import this, let's open this up. Let me bring this over for you all to see. Okay, so we have our reticle. And we can see that it's transparent because of the little checkers in the background. Is everybody with me so far? All right, keeping this simple. Kevin, welcome to the stream. Okay, so now we have what we want our reticle to look like. We just need to create a material to use this reticle. So we're keeping things simple right now. All right, and what we're going to do is, something is definitely going on with my Wacom tablet. But anyways, let's create a new material. And we're going to call this M underbar. What should we call this, you all? Reticle. Yeah, we'll call this M underbar reticle. Now, when we go in here, the way materials work in Unreal Engine, there's lots of different options. In this particular case, this is currently set up as a default. Actually, let me increase the size. That was a Control-Shift-W for those of you that like to figure this out so that we can make this easier for you all to read. Over here in the bottom left, you can see the material domain that this is set to right now is surface. All right, I'm going to change this to be UI because we are going to be using this with the user interface. So we set it to user interface. When we do that, we only have two real options here, okay? We basically, or the number of options gets reduced greatly. So we have our final color, our opacity, and our opacity mask. We're going to change this to be rather than being opaque, we're going to make it masked. Now, when we do that, the other thing I want to do, what's going to happen is if we take and we basically, what we could do is we could drag and drop our texture in here. So let me just save a bunch of this stuff so that we don't lose it. Okay, if we browse to this asset, let me see what's going on with my Wacom pen. Something is weird. Okay, if we just drag this into our material editor, it will automatically create the texture sample for us. Okay, if we take the RGB and we plug that into our final color, something happened. It did not, it's almost like it didn't take the square from asset. Interesting. We're gonna keep it square for right. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, actually we can do that with procedural stuff as far as corner stretching goes. Right now I have a more fundamental problem, which is this does not look the way I expect it to. So we have our alpha. Do we? Oh, our alpha channel is, no, we do. Our alpha channel is good. We have red, green, and blue. Oh, I see. So this all came in as alpha. Okay, so it's important to understand this. The whole thing is white. So if we take a look at this, if we take a look at this alpha channel and we feed it into the mask, we get our square. Okay, so the color here doesn't even matter, actually. We could use something else. I guess this entire thing is considered a white square. And if we uncheck the alpha, you can see what the material sees. If you just look at the RGB of this material, it's all white. So what makes it a square is the alpha channel. So remember, there's 4 channels to these things. So when we look at this in our reticle, we actually need the alpha to give us a final color. Now, another way to do this would be to create a color 3 vector. I'm going to hold the 3 key and left click. This creates a color 3 vector for me. This is RGB. If I take this, let's make this hot pink so we can see it. If I take this and I plug this into our final color, you'll notice that it turns my image pink, okay? And I also have this alpha mask. So we can now control the color by changing this color, and we can make this a material parameter. If we right click on this and we convert this to a parameter, this is going to be reticle color. We'll just call it the color for now because this is called im_bar reticle. Okay, so let's apply this and save this. So at its basic level, what we are doing is we are displaying a color and then we are masking it with our square box outline. Everybody with me? Now, if we take this material and we use this as our material for our reticle now, we should get a nice hot pink reticle. So let's go ahead and go to our BP for, let's see here, our UI for our widget for our target reticle lock. If we look, we have a border. Right now our border is set to a brush of nothing. There's no image or anything like that. In here we can change this to be a material. So if we do the reticle material, you'll notice that our image changes to a nice hot pink square box that is also see-through. It's transparent. Remember, the transparency is being controlled by the alpha channel. Okay, so if we compile and save this and we press play again, now we see our reticle is over here on this character. And if we do our shift, we can shift our reticle around. So already our reticle looks better, right? Now, if we want to make a change, this is where we get into kind of the more of the conversations of how we edit this and the proceduralness of it and all this kind of stuff. So what if we don't want a box? What if we want our reticle to look more like a reticle, for example? What we can do, typical workflow, if we come back here to Photoshop, I'm going to turn our background on so we can see what we're doing. I'm going to do a cutout. I'm not even going to make it perfect. I'm just going to make it good enough. Okay. We're going to cut out this section of our rectangle. In order to do this, I'm going to rasterize this so that it's actual pixels. And then I'm going to select and delete. And now our reticle kind of looks like this. So if we export this as our PNG file, so let's export this, save for web, save, keep all the same settings. And we're just going to overwrite our square. Oh, actually, we forgot one thing. We need to turn off our background, because if we don't have an alpha mask, and we need the alpha mask. So export, save for web. We're going to go with the PNG again. We're going to overwrite what was there. Save. And then, yes, we want to replace it. And then back in Unreal Engine, what we can do is take our square and we can re-import it. Now you'll notice that our square is updated to just have the edges. And if we look at our reticle now just has the edges. They're not perfectly even or whatever, but that's not the point. Okay. So now when we play, our reticle looks much more like a reticle. Okay. That is the basic way to use materials. Simple, red, green, blue, put them on a material, show the material on the screen. Now, before we go into step 2, I want to make a quick, actually, before we even do that, does anybody have any questions on the basics of creating a material, creating a texture, importing it into Unreal Engine, using that texture within our material so that we can change the color using the alpha mask, etc. Does anybody have any questions on that before we move on? Okay. Now, the other quick thing I want to change before we move on is our enemies right now are walking off screen. It's kind of driving me crazy. So we're going to make one quick update. Right now, our enemy location is at 2000 in X. So what I want to do real quick in our actor location is I'm going to break this. If this is less than, let's say, I'm hard coding this, so let's go 1300. If that's true, I'm going to set the actor position to be, let's split this pen. We're going to use the same Y and the same Z, but our X is going to be 2000. Okay, so what this is going to do is it's going to reset our actor location, and then we'll go ahead and move it. So theoretically, if we did that right, that was very fast. Let's just see. When they get to less than 1300, they should snap back to where they started from. So I don't have to, yeah, okay, great. Okay. So this way they're kind of like, I don't have to sit here and wait for them to, or restart the level for this. So we could say probably 1100 probably actually. Okay, cool. So one quick little blueprint update. All right. Bart Nowakowski, I'm sorry if I said that name wrong, but generally speaking, hard coding is yes. If you set the value and the user, the player, the developer, nobody else can change it, it's generally called hard coding because it's a hard set value. You cannot change it unless you go back into the code or the original thing and you build it. So in a weird way, you could say this reticle is hard coded. In other words, we can't really change the shape of it from the standpoint of we can change the colors, etc., but the actual mask is hard coded to whatever we exported from Photoshop. Okay, so now that we have this, let's build a new reticle. And this reticle we are going to build procedurally using the material graph so that we can better understand how materials go together. And this is going to be a little bit of a wild ride. So here we go. First things first, let's go to our materials and we're going to create a new material. This material is going to be called m_reticle procedural. Just for the cases. Procedure. Yeah. We'll just do proceed. Okay. So here we go. Welcome to math class. Not really, but welcome to creative problem solving is probably the best way to do it. So first things first, we're going to convert this to be a UI material, user interface. We are going to keep it, we're going to make it masked, and we are going to start to do some work here. So one of the things that is interesting about building this procedurally is what we want is we really want to create this same kind of square or roughly something like this. We're not going to get quite to this level of roundness in the corners, all these stuff, because that's like just beyond the scope of teaching you all about how these materials work. but we are going to teach you a few things about how this all comes together. So right now, if we create, let's do something. Let's do a linear gradient, okay? Now a linear gradient is exactly what it sounds like. It's a gradual changing of color. If I right click on this node and do an enable preview, oh wait, start previewing. Okay, you'll see I have a linear gradient here. All right, and then over on the left, it is 0, and over on the right, it is 1. This is the color dimension that we're working in right now, okay? Now, what I want to do is I want to somehow get this linear gradient so that the right edge is bright and solid, and everything else is black. So how do we do that? Well, if we look at this, let's go to Photoshop. Let's actually create a new layer here. This is perfect. I'll create a new layer. I'm gonna fill it with white so we can do some drawing. And then let's do a little bit of drawing. Okay, so we've got, I need a pen. Okay. What the heck brush is that? I just want a normal brush, y'all. Let's go with this one. And then let's take our brush size down. Okay, and we'll zoom in a little bit. Okay, so what we have is we actually have a linear gradient, and if you just imagine that this line represents the linear gradient, on the left side over here it's black, and on the right side it's white. So on the left side we have 0 for black, and on the right side we have 1 for white. That's the value of that pixel if you're looking at a single channel, for example, right? And then somewhere in the middle, if it's linear, you have a 0.5. 0.5. Okay, so because it's linear, if we're a quarter of the way, this is going to be 0.75. Okay, and this is going to be 0.25. I'm making this simple. I'm not going through every point, but you'll get the idea. Okay, so if these are the values of the colors at each of these points on the line, and I want the last quarter, I want, oops, undo, and I want, nope. If I want from here over to be solid, I need to find a way to make every dot here to be 1. Okay, so if we subtract 0.75 from every pixel along this line, what do we get? 0 minus 0.75, we get negative 0.75, right? 0.25 minus 0.75 is negative 0.5. 0.5 minus 0.75 is minus 0.25. 0.75 minus 0.75 is 0, and this is going to go to 1. All right, so let's do that. In here, if we take this and we're going to use the U gradient, if we subtract 0.75, look at what happens in the change in our gradient. See how it's only on the right side? But it's a little bit faded, so we can't really quite use this yet. So now what we've done is we've shifted basically 0 to 1 to be 0 to 1 in this range. Okay, so right after 0.75 at 0.76, I'm going to write down here at 0.76 minus 0.75, that equals 0.01. So it has a value. It has a value, which is great. All right, so what we're going to do then is multiply everything by like 100. So what is 0.01 times 100? It's 1, for example. So let's take this and multiply it by 100. So if we multiply this by 100, watch what happens now. Start previewing node. We have a solid white square on the right side. Is everybody with me with this material math fun? Okay, I'm gonna go with yes. Everybody's with me. So by changing how much we subtract, in other words, by changing how much we subtract, we can push where this line is, left or right. So if we only subtract 0.25, if we go back to Unreal, if we only subtract 0.25, what you'll notice is 0.25, 0.25, you'll notice that it gets wider. So if I do 0.8, it gets thinner. Let's go 0.9. 0.95. Okay, that looks pretty good. So that's the right side, if you will. So now we've created a line. We've procedurally created a line that is on the right side of our material plane, okay? And there should be a couple of questions in your mind, okay? Remember, if we look at this, we currently have, if we're using our 0.75 example, we currently have negative numbers here, 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 and here. That's kind of not super clean. Because what if we want to do something after the fact, like add more materials on top of it or change the values? They're not going to multiply the same. So what we could do if we wanted to is, and also remember this value 1, it right here, what's 1 times 100? It's 100. So the value at the far right edge of this, even though you can only see a white line, it's actually 100. It's really, really high. So what we want to do is we want to clamp that down to be 0 to 1. And so we could use a clamp. You'll see if we type in clamp here. All right, and we start previewing that. It looks exactly the same because what we've done is we've just brought the range down from negative 0.75 to 100. Actually, it's negative 75 to a positive 100 down to 0 to 1. Now, nobody uses clamp nodes because they're expensive. Everybody uses a saturate node. So there are times where we do use clamp nodes, but in general, you'll see in a lot of material work that this saturate node is used instead because mathematically, as the geniuses have explained it to me, is this is less instructions, so it's faster. But all this does is this gives us a value that we can now work with to multiply by other values and plug into different things. So it's a way for us to get to a place where we know we're still working 0 to 1. All right, now we want to do the same thing to get the left side. How are we going to do that? There's a couple things we can do. One thing we can do, we know if we go back to this, if we start previewing this, we have our gradient. Well, what if we just flipped our gradient? So if we take our gradient and we go 1 minus, what this does is it says for each point along here, let's go ahead and do another layer. We'll hide this one, okay? We'll go back to our brush. We have our line. Remember, we're going 0, 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, and 1, right? Undo. These are all these points. Okay, what does this 1 minus node do? This 1 minus x, back to, algebra. What is 1 minus 0? 1. 1 minus x. Okay, x being these values. What is 1 minus 0.25? 0.75. 1 minus 0.5 is 0.5. 1 minus 0.75 is 0.25. And 1 minus 1 is 0. 1 minus x flips it. It literally flips it with, as long as it's within a range of 0 to 1. And that's why the whole 0 to 1 thing can be important at certain times. There are times we want to go beyond 1, like making things glow. That's awesome. So now if we preview this 1 minus x, watch it flip. It flips to the other direction. Now all the exact same math applies if we want to create a bar on the left side. So let's take all of this stuff, copy it, paste it, and preview this one. Right click, start preview. Right click, start preview. Now we have a bar on the left side. So we have a bar on the left side coming out of this node. We have a bar on the right side coming out of this node. We need to combine these two together. So let's add these two together. So we're going to add them. And what we're going to get is 2 bars. So let's start previewing this. You'll notice we have a bar on each side now. So we have effectively created a left and right side to our reticle procedurally, which is cool. Now, we need to do the same thing for the vertical aspects of it, the vertical components of it. Okay, cool. Let's do that. So right now we have all that. Let's just copy all of this. And we're going to redo the exact same stuff, but rather than in the direction of U, which is left to right. Oh, actually, that's probably a good thing to mention. Okay. So in the material domain, when you're looking at a square, we've talked about R, G, B, and A, red, green, blue, and alpha. There's also U and V, okay? U and V is the 2D representation of X and Y coordinates in a material space. So if you're looking at this square here, this direction is U, and this direction up is V. Generally speaking. Now, depends on how the UV layouts are done for any particular object, but if generally speaking, in its base case, if you take a plane, bottom left corner, 0 to 1, top to right to left, bottom to top, you get U and V. So you can see that because if we look at our, start previewing, this is our U direction. If we plug this in, if we do this here, if we take the V direction, I'll just do it here. All right, if we start previewing this, this is U. If we start previewing this, this is V. See how it goes vertical now? Now, all we did was change to using the vertical part of the gradient. And by doing so, now if we look at these saturate nodes over here on the right, we have a bottom bar and we have a top bar. Make sense? So what are we going to do? We're going to add these together too. All right. And in material space, we've got basically top, left and right bars and top and bottom bars. Okay. Now let's add these together. And when we add these together, now we got a square. Look at that, y'all. We made a square. Okay. So this is really cool. Now, remember, right now, this is all just in, depending on how we plug this in, this will change how this all works. So right now, we're just looking at the actual out values of our square. If we plug this into our final color and we stop previewing, you'll see we have a final color of our reticle. It is a white square on black. Now let's take this, save this. Let's apply this to our target lock reticle. Golly day, something is going on with that. Okay. So for our border, we're going to replace this with our new reticle procedural. What do you mean it doesn't use the UI? Apply and save. Okay, there we go. We have a script now, but look at the problem. Okay, when we play now, see how we have a white square with a big black center? That's because we are not working with the alpha. We need to work with the alpha too. Okay, so if we go back to our material, what we need to do is you'll notice that we do not have any mask filled in for our opacity mask. So there's a couple things that we can do. We know that what we want to show is wherever it's white, and what we want to hide is wherever it's black. That's how a mask works. So if we just plug this straight into our opacity mask as well, that will work. If we apply this and save this when we press play, also, I want to save this just in case because, you know, crashes. So now we have a square. We have built a procedural square using materials. That's pretty cool. Okay, so now if we go back, now let's make this a little bit better. What we want to do is we want to have control over this. We want to be able to change the colors of it. So the final color, all of this is basically added together. Now, it's worth noting for those of you that are like, super astute, stickler to details. Remember, we added, if we look at this, we added left and right and top and bottom, right? All these values are 1. Now, technically speaking, unless there's something going on under the hood, in the corners, we're adding 1 and 1. So our corners are actually 2. Each of our corners, there's a little block of 2 because we have overlap in our edges. Let's see if we can bring that out. But before we do that, let me finish my first thought. I just wanted to put a nod. If you're thinking that the corners are 2, you're right. We should have a value of 2 in the corners. But really what we want to do is we want to be able to change this color. So let's create, I'm going to hold the 3 key and left click, and then I'm going to right click and convert to parameter. And we're going to call this color. We're going to set its default value to yellow, just so we can delineate between the two. And we're going to take this and we're going to multiply this. So if we take any value, 0.5, 7, whatever it is, and we multiply it by 1, what do we get? We get the same value. So it works with colors too, because colors are just numbers. So what is yellow times 1? Yellow. So in this particular case, if I want to change this to be yellow, what I can do is I can just feed this in and I should get a yellow square. Stop previewing. I do. I now have a yellow square. Okay, so now technically speaking, I don't even have to do this. What I could do is just plug yellow straight into our final color and it'll still be a yellow square. Why is that? That is because we're using an opacity mask. So the yellow is being masked by wherever we have white. If we disconnect our opacity mask, we get a yellow box. If we reconnect our yellow multiplication, we get a yellow square with a black interior. That's important to understand the difference. So we have a yellow square with a black interior right now, even though we have a yellow square. So understanding how this multiplication works is important. Now, let's see if we can bring out the fact that we actually have the corners as 2. So if we're right, and by the way, I could be totally wrong on this, you all. If we're right, if we subtract 1 from everything, along the edges, we should get 0, and in the corners, we should get 1. So let's try this, just to see if there's some kind of stuff going. So we're gonna subtract 1, and we'll feed that in. Look at that. Come on, y'all. So for those of you that were wrapping your head around this and you're thinking, well, wait a minute, you didn't put a saturate at the end, you're right. So now what we have is we have 4 dots, and you can see the 4 dots moving, which is kind of cool. Okay. So through the use of a little bit of understanding of the math and understanding that these values, if we hide this one and bring this one back, these values can go above and below 1. And when they do, they can be powerful because you can do things like, in this particular case, we've made it so that the corners is something that we can work with. So if we wanted to, we could even make this an option by subtracting 1. Now, technically speaking, we could do a saturate at the end, or what we could do is I believe we could just do 1 saturate. If we take this all out, we plug this all in. This is going to remove our corners, by the way. Okay, so there's no longer any saturates in here. We're adding these in. We're not going to subtract 1 anymore. And let's see here. Add. Start previewing. Wait a second. Start previewing. Start previewing. We take that and we add in. Interesting. Actually, I guess we need to saturate. Why would that be? 100. Oh, it's because the negative values are canceling out the positive values. So we actually need to saturate. Okay, so we're going to keep that. We'll keep that here. So many cool things about this. It's crazy. So once again, understanding the math, the fact that we can go above and below 1. Now, where else is this knowing that we can go above and below 1 important? It's important in another dimension of materials, which is we can do things with materials where not only do we have color and UV coordinates, but we also have world position. So if you've ever done any of my tutorials on using carve outs for, like we did one where we were doing a carve out for cameras so you could still see your character behind walls and stuff, the position of an object in space can also be used. And the position in object in space is not represented 0 to 1. It's 0 to, for example, the X position of our enemies is 2000. So we could do things like color all enemies on one side of a map based on their world position. And if you go onto the other side of the map, they're going to get a different color. That's one thing. Another great use of that is when you see a lot of these levels where there's snow on top of things, they're using the Z position to figure out whether or not there should be snow, for example. That's just an example. Okay, but right now, if we stop previewing, we're back to our reticle. We understand that we have dots. If we wanted to get rid of the dots, we could add in a saturate at the end of here. Okay, let me bring this back so you can see this. So we have our dots, but if we simply control click to drag this to here and we re-import this, you'll notice we no longer have any dots. That's because this is no longer above 1. This is 0 to 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0, so we're not getting anything there. But if we plug it in, we get our square. Okay. Whew. So we have successfully created a procedural reticle. Everybody with me? Displant, welcome back to the stream. Natalie. Okay. Here we go. We're all good. Okay. So now let's level this up. Okay. And I'm gonna actually cheat and use my notes for this because what time is it? How are we doing? Oh, it's already 12:10 and I want to get back to the other part. So what do I want to do? What I want to do is I want to make this round. So to do that, let's do a couple things. Oh, actually no. Okay, we're not quite done. Even before we make this round, what about the cutouts, y'all? How are we going to do the cutouts? Okay, there's something to understand. What we want to do, what we did in Photoshop, if you recall, is we created basically this square in the middle and we cut it out. We can do the same thing procedural in materials as well. All right, but before we do that, what's important to understand, there is one thing that's important to understand. Let's give us one more layer. Create a new layer so I can do some more drawings. Okay, so I'm going to draw a smaller box. Okay, if we take a look, and this is our box. This is our UV space, for example. Okay, this is 0. This is 1. 0 and 1. And this is U, and this is V. Everybody with me? Now, technically what happens in UV space is it repeats, usually. There's different ways to set it, but generally speaking, if you set up a default plane, etc., it's important to understand that the UV space is a repeating space. So what is happening is, over here, there's another box. You can't see it, but it's there. In UV space, or box may not be, but the thing to understand is what happens is this pattern will repeat on the other side of this. So what we can do is we can shift things in UV space. So we could take this 1 and we can shift it this way by subtracting, and then the pattern will look different. So let's take a look at that. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay. And one of the cool things is you can figure this out is, all right, there's a couple ways to do this. Let's just work with a linear gradient, and I don't want to confuse you all too much with the other things. So we have a U gradient. We know what this looks like. It looks like it looks like a 0 to 1. Okay. Now, if we know that the U's and V's are repeating, what we can do is we can take the texture coordinate, and we can, I believe it's, what do I want to do with that? Hold on. There we go. I want to add. I'm going to add to this. So what I'm going to add to this is a -0.5. So what this is going to do, not -0.5. What this is going to do is it's going to tell this cube, this box, that 1 is not here. 1 is going to be here. So watch what happens when we plug this in. Oh, that actually went the wrong way. Let's add 0.5. Oh, it went to the other side. Okay, yeah, actually this is doing what I want. So by doing a -0.5, -0.5, what this does is this shifts this over. Okay, and then vice versa, we can go the other way as well. Or now that we have that, we can do 1-. So what we're going to do is we're going to build the plus that's in the middle. Okay, so to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to do the same thing. Let's multiply by 100, saturate it, and we'll get, if we look at this, we end up with a square box. So I'm not going to continue with this, but what I want you to understand is not only can you shift things by changing the color values, you can also shift them in UV space. And a really cool thing to look at is if you go into this linear gradient and you open it up, you can see what they're doing is they're changing the coordinate systems for this using this vector. And you can start messing with how your textures are lined up based on the UV coordinates that come into them. Now, if we want to keep this simple, what we can do is we could do it the same way without using the coordinates. You know what? Let's just use the coordinates. Why not? Okay, we'll use the coordinates. So if we subtract 0.75, I think. Yeah. Okay, so this time we're doing it with not the color, but the UV. So if we do the same thing again, actually, if we do this, if we go 1 minus on this, 1 minus. So we're building the plus that we're going to use to subtract. And actually, we don't even need to do it here. We can do it right here, I think. So if we start previewing this, that's the, ooh, I don't like that. Oh, we can't do it here. We need to do it here. So we're going to put the 1 minus, 1 minus, and then we'll do the multiply and saturate. And you'll notice what we have is we have, start previewing. Why is that not right? Hold on a second. Start previewing. Oh, yep. Actually, 1 minus doesn't work because we're using UV space. So we actually need to do this like so. Create a linear gradient, plug this in, and rather than negative 0.75, I think we need a normal point. Start previewing. Start previewing. 0.75. Hold on a second, my brain hurts, y'all. We have colors that is here. This is our gradient. And I want the same thing but the other direction, but in UV terms. Let's try something. If we are previewing this, if we go 2.5, oh, I see. Can we multiply this by -1? Let's try. -1. I love live experimentation. It always works out. Not ever, but okay, that's fine. Okay, so multiplying that UV space doesn't work. Okay, interesting. This gets really funky when we do this in UV space, you all. Because what we have is we have the opposite of what we want. So in here, if we do our 1 minus, I believe we get what we're looking for. Yep. And then we have to do our subtraction. I don't like that. I think that's messy. So I'm not going to do this. I do want to show, I will show you another use of the UV stuff. Actually, no. Let's bring that back. Let me try one other thing. Okay. Let's take our texture coordinate this time, and we're going to add the -0.5. And then rather than, before we fill it into our linear gradient, let's multiply it by 2 times 2. Let's see what we get. Start previewing. Okay. This is going to hurt your brain to look at. Okay, so when you look at this, you got to understand this is the texture coordinates, right? You have U going one way, V going the other way, and as they mix together, this is kind of what this looks like. So if we add to this a 0.5, what this is going to do, -0.5, sorry. Start previewing. Look at the difference. If we add nothing, we have the default. If we add a -0.5, it breaks it up into squares, and we have the red, green, blue squares, etc. Okay. So if we take this and we grab the, I think what I want to do is what is this going to give me? Hold on. I want to make sure. Yeah. This is worth showing you all just so you understand what's going on, but basically we can build this exact type stuff using texture coordinates instead. So what's happening is, so then we have our multiply, all right? And then if we take that, what we can do with that is we can actually now get the, interesting. If we take this and mask it basically, if we take and we do a mask on this, I'm going to show you something. Not the bit mask, component mask. Let's just take the red channel in this case. Start previewing this node. Okay, if we just take red, see how we only get one channel? This gives us a gradient just like doing it with the colors up here, except we're still using the texture coordinates. We're not even using colors right now. We're just using the texture coordinates. All right, as a result of that, I believe we might actually be able to do things like, can I do a 1 minus on this? Yeah, so that flips it to the other direction. Okay, so if we start previewing this and we add 0.5, nope, negative 0.5, multiply by -2. There we go, that flips it to the other side. So here's, okay, great. So what we'll do is we'll take this and we'll multiply by 2 and -2. All right, and then what's gonna happen is we can grab this mask for both of them. We don't even need this linear gradient right now. And so we have a right side and a left side. Okay, and then we can use the same thing that we were doing before. This goes 0 to 1, etc., although we've multiplied by 2 and -2. So what we can do is we can say, let's do, basically we want to make this blank in the middle, for example. So if we take and we subtract, let's subtract off, let's try subtracting, if we subtract 1, that's too much. So let's go 0.5. Okay, so now we're getting there, 0.6, 0.7, 0.6. Let's go 0.6 on this. Okay, we're going to subtract 0.6 from each of these, and that's going to give us each of the sides. So we have a left and a right side, and then we're going to do the same thing we did again. Let's go ahead and multiply by, we don't have to multiply by 100. I think we only have to multiply by, but let's just do 100 anyways because it's not going to break anything. Delete this, Control C, Control V, paste this in. Okay, so now these are going to be bright white, solid. You with me? Okay, let's saturate these or clamp them. Okay, and then add them together. So we're going to add these together. Start previewing. Okay, so we have 2 white bars. Now let's do our 1 minus. Okay, and if we preview that, we have a big white bar in the middle. So there's a couple things we can do. So that gives us our vertical piece that we want to cut out of this piece here. We want to cut this out of here. Okay, so what we can do is we can take this, remember this is a black box. What we can do is we've saturated this. If we take this saturate here, this is our square box. If we multiply these together, remember we have black in the middle here. So if we multiply this by, if we multiply our square box by our black carve out, you'll see what we get is a carve out in the middle. Okay, so now we have procedurally created this piece that we had done by hand up here in Unreal Engine. Now, we can do the exact same thing, but this time we can do it with the V space. So if we take this exact same, let's get this out of the way so it doesn't confuse anybody. Let's take these values and let's just do a simple thing here where rather than masking R, let's go ahead and mask G. I think this may give us the other axis. Component mask, yep. And let's just get the G value and let's look at that. Yep, so that's the vertical component. So this is the other crazy thing about wrapping your head around materials. Even though there's 5 dimensions, a lot of times they're not called the same, right? We're used to using red, green, blue, and alpha with materials, right? But then when you talk about it in UV space, we talk about it as U and V, but really when you go do your masking, it's noted as R and G. So technically the second one, G, is the same as V. And it happens in world space too. RGB can also represent X, Y, and Z, which is why materials in Unreal Engine is awesome. It's pretty crazy how it all works. But if we copy this and paste this down here, and then we redo all of this, what we're going to end up with is take all this and we add it together. Let's go ahead and add these two together. This is going to give us the other part of our cross. We can add these two together, and this is going to give us the next part. So now that we've added everything together, if we look at this first, what we get is, hold on a second, not what I was expecting. Oh, okay. So we have our vertical bars. What we actually want is a black bar through the middle. But what we currently have right now is a black bar, but what we want to do, we can't add them, because if we add, look at the space up the top. If this space up the top is white, which is 1, it's probably more than 1 right now, but it just go with white. If we add white to black, we get white. What we actually want to do is multiply these two. So let's multiply. And this is where the saturation can start to be important, 0 to 1, because if these values go beyond 1, they will not become 0 when you multiply. So if we start previewing, look at that. We have our cross now. Okay. So with that, what we can do is we can take this and we can multiply that by our original square. And when we preview this, you'll notice that we have our reticles in the corner. Okay. So what we've done is we have created the ability to have a procedural reticle in Unreal Engine. And what we can do is we can feed this into our color channel. We can stop previewing this, and we have our nice yellow reticles at the corners. If we apply this and we save this and we go ahead and click play, dude, that's pretty cool. Okay, except we built this one procedurally, which is powerful because if we go back and we do something like, let's say we want to change how big these carve out sections are, we can create a variable by pressing the S key and left clicking, and this is going to be let's call it carve out or dead space. I don't know what you want to call it. Come up with something better. We've all figured out that I'm really bad at naming things. So let's set the default value to 0.6 on this, and we can plug this into all of these spots where we're doing 0.6. Okay. And now what will happen is if we apply this, if we change 0.6 to be 0.2, this becomes a much broader, and if we go 0.8, you'll see that it gets much smaller. So we can actually now control what our reticle is doing, and we could even animate this using our reticle widget, which we're going to do next time. We're going to take all of this, we're going to plug it in, we're going to make it animate when we target a new enemy and stuff like that. So in this case, I kind of like the way 0.6 works, 0.6. But now this is a variable that we can use to drive the actual look of our reticle. And we can do the same thing up here. Right now we have 0.95s across the board. If we create another variable here, this is going to be reticle. This is going to be, what is this going to be? This is going to be, oh, width. Or, yeah, sure. We'll call it width for now. And let's set a default value of 0.95. And we can plug this into all of these. Okay, and now if we change this to 0.9, our reticle gets thicker. So through a case of changing our, if we go 0.4 on this, 0.4, okay, we can make a thicker reticle. So that combined with being able to change this color, what we can do if we apply and save this now is we can do what is amazing and powerful about materials is we can right click on this and we can create a material instance, and we could have a different reticle depending on which weapon we're using, for example. So if we just call this reticle red, for example, Reticle red thin. You come up with whatever you want to use for it, but by opening this material, we now have these parameters that we can use to change very quickly, and we can change our reticle to red, and we can make it thinner, super thin, and kind of grow that. Okay, so now we can change our sizes of our reticles. The reason we're able to do that is because we have a solid understanding of how all of this math is working, right? Remember, the key here is once you realize this, if we go back to Photoshop, what am I looking at? Okay, if we go back to Photoshop, what we were talking about was the ability to understand this 0 to 1 thing. So with that, what I want to do real quick, I know we're over time, but what I want to do real quick is take some of these learnings and apply it to the original reticle we made to give us the ability to use a combination of art and math to get control over the original reticle we made too. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to come back to here. Okay, we're going to bring back our reticle. And what I want to do is I'm going to take and do a little bit of creative work on this. So I'm going to fill in using a gradient. Where what we're going to do is, this might take, actually I'm going to just do it one way for time's sake, other way. If we go from the middle to the top, and this goes 0 to 1, you can see we now have a gradient. Okay, ideally what you would do is, actually maybe we can just use a circular gradient and we'll do it all at once. That's not going to quite work either. We have to do this in sections, you all. All right, so let's take this top corner. Okay, and actually, let's do one other thing. Yeah, I don't want to get too lost in this. I'm trying to figure out the fast way. Let's go ahead and do this in the top corner here. And what I'm going to do is, from here to here, we're going to take a circular gradient and go left to right. Let's see if that does it. Yep, okay, cool. And then we're going to do the same thing the other way. And we're going to take a circular gradient and we're going to go like this. Uh-oh. Gee. Oh, hold on. I messed that up. You're going to have to be way more deliberate about this. Oh, I see what's happening. Let's go back to linear so I can control this. Okay, so now we have kind of 0 to 1 that way. And we can do the same thing down here. I think we can do a better job down here. Let's do this. 0 to 1. And then let's go the other way. We'll go like this. Let's fill this in. Okay, and same thing on this side. So now what we're doing is we're authoring our source art in a way that allows us to control this. So let's just say this was better than it is. Let's re-export this and let's give ourselves some control. Now that we understand the whole 0 to 1 thing, oh wait, we need to turn off our black background. I'm not even going to worry about the alpha, I don't think. I'm not going to worry about the alpha. We should be able to fix it in Unreal, even with what we have. So let's just do this. Okay, so save. We're going to overwrite the one we have. Why not? And then let's come back to Unreal Engine and let's go back to our square and let's re-import it. Okay, so now we have a square with black tips and white middles. And if we look at our reticle, it's, interestingly enough, it doesn't look as bad as I was expecting. It's because it's using the opacity mask. Okay, so if we look at this and we multiply, let's just put a multiply in here just so we can see it. If we look at this, you can see our opacity mask is 0 to 1. That's still our masking. That's not what we want. If we look at our RGB, okay, you can see where we have the 0 to 1 in the black. So let's take these two and multiply them together. Now, by doing that, we now have shades of gray. Shades of gray are great because what I can do is I can take this and let's multiply it by 100 and preview this. I now have a very solid reticle, okay? Because I've multiplied it by 100, I could saturate this to bring it back down to 1, and then I could plug this in as my opacity mask multiplied by my color. Let's just actually I don't even need to multiply by my color. I'll just plug this in. Stop previewing. Okay, and we have what we right now what we have is we have a very solid pink reticle. Okay, if we don't do this multiply 1.0, we have, oh, it's using an opacity mask. Okay, this is important. We don't have, we can use this to make this smaller or larger. So if we go 2, you can see it growing, 4, 0.8, 0.5. See how it's shrinking and growing, 0.3. So by thinking about how we author our source art, even if we don't go full procedural craziness, by giving ourselves the ability to understand that we can multiply and basically take the values, even if it's 0.001, multiply it by 1,000 and then clamp it back down, we can do all kinds of creative stuff that would even give us control over the size of the reticle, even if it comes from source art, as long as the source art is authored in a way that gives us the pieces that we might want to be able to do that. Hopefully that all makes sense. Okay, now let me see where we're at as far as questions. Try to catch up. What do you all think of that? Okay, so let's see here. Catching up, normalize, Bart, yes, clamp, saturate, those are kind of like normalize. Average tech art artist, happiness, yeah, look, I made a square. If it's not a square, it's a print screen. Like, look, I made a print string. Or, hey, look, I found the stupid checkbox. That's always a thing too. Yeah. Are there nodes other than linear grading that can be beautiful or be useful for procedure? Yes, absolutely. So you can do, actually I can just show you, I think I did one in here. Yeah, so what we can do, let me show you this real quick. What we can do is there are also, for example, we can do things like rather than linear gradient, we can use a radial gradient. So if we start previewing this, this is a radial gradient that has a super high density. What I want you to notice is, and this is just another example of math, I took a radial gradient and watch what happens when I preview this one. It's smaller, okay? So if I take these two and I subtract them, I get a ring. I can use this ring not only for UI stuff, I can use it for AOE effects, I can do all kinds of stuff, okay? Just using a radial gradient. So then what I did is I took that ring, okay? And what I did is I said, well, wouldn't it be cool if we could subtract out the cross pattern here? You can see the cross pattern here that I'm subtracting. This is my final ring, okay? So rather than having a square gradient, I have a circular gradient that I could use as my targeting reticle with a cross cutout. The cross cutout, this is why I showed you some of the importance of the texture coordinates. What I did was I took the texture coordinates and I rotated them by a quarter. So if we look at this linear gradient, right now you can see it's rotated slightly. If I disconnect this, it's the normal left to right. But if I connect this in, what I did is I took that UV space and I rotated it. So now 0's down here and 1's up here, etc. And by doing that, then doing all the multiplication, etc., I end up with this X. Because what I did is I took that gradient and same thing I did. We subtracted, we multiplied by 100, we saturated it, we carved it all out just by rotating that. And so now what I'm doing is I'm taking a circle, subtracting an X, and I'm getting left with a circular, for example. If you want to see some super intense versions of this, for example, if you look at the Lyra project, let me see if I have it open. I actually do have it open. Yes. Okay, so the Lyra project is like a super intense version of this. So this is what the procedural Lyra reticle looks like, and you can see all the little pieces. This is a great way to see all the cool little things that they're done in here. So like here they created a kind of like a faded X using saturates, and like this is their point star, use 8-point star. Yeah, so there's an 8-point star in here. These are the options. But in here, if you come in here, you can see this is a texture coordinate that's being rotated. So if we look at this, you can see that that's being rotated and then added absolute value. Let's see what that looks like. So this gives us by rotating these UVs, now we've got basically a cross pattern. Then they mask it. So when they mask it, what ends up happening is this is the horizontal aspect of it. They use so there's a lot of really, like, if you want to see some of the shapes you can make just using procedural stuff, there's a lot of cool stuff in here, just as a point of reference or a learning resource for you all. Okay, so let's go back to our questions. Okay. Okay, it's Control Shift click in Blender with no render. So let's see here. Negative space. Yeah, negative space, Rusty. That would have been a better use of it. Better word for sure. In terms of optimization, which method is better? You know, it's interesting. I would have to check. It would depend on how complex your procedural material is. The reason I mention that is really we're basically just using a UV space. We're not even like, there's not a lot of instructions that are happening here. So if you look at the number of instructions at the end, you can look at the number of instructions in your stats and see. And I think if you have a low instruction count versus textures that you're sending all around, like the procedural is probably better. But if your procedural setup has crazy high instructions, it may not be as beneficial. You kind of have to look at it. But like right now, let's see here. How many instructions is our reticle? So right now our reticle is 50 instructions and 47 on the vertex shader. So, oh no, that's the M reticle. Actually we have it. Our procedural reticle is 63 instructions with 47 on the shader. So, you know, 50 verse 63, and also we can get our normal one down even more if we get rid of all of the multiplies and everything. If you just feed in the texture sample to the opacity mask and the color, you're down at 48 instructions. I'm pretty sure 48 or 60 is not a big deal. And for me, I like the flexibility of being able to procedurally change my reticle. But that was a really good question. So keeping an eye on your instruction count is really the answer to that, as well as making sure that all of the fancy textures you're using for your reticles or whatever you're doing in general, that's going to be packaging. Let's see here. Okay. Finally know what saturated exactly is doing. Yes. That is a shotgun reticle. Yes, Rusty, the reticle I showed you in the Lyra project, that's a shotgun reticle. Sworn, don't worry. It's all recorded. The videos will be in the live section, so don't worry about it. You're not too late. last one, maybe something for another, but how would you go about making a 3D reticle, like the arrow? That would just, my initial instinct is that's a 3D object, but Kevin, that so real quick one, you can throw this in the forums too, but the Octobot, the reason your box would show up at 000 instead of by the character would be because you are not in the proper space. Like you're in rig space versus world space or something like that, and you probably have to convert between the two. Yep, Sworn's on it. All right, you all, that wraps up our material adventures and rabbit hole for today. Hopefully this explanation of the way the values work, how they can go beyond 1 and below 0, the math behind it, etc., and why we're doing these things, it maybe helps unlock some of the understanding of how to potentially build this stuff and also modify even your own art assets and stuff like that. Next week, we're going to be taking these reticles and we're going to be putting them on our character and getting them to animate when we switch between characters as part of our reticle setup. And so we're going to be continuing more on the reticle component side of things next week. As always, thank you everybody for joining the live stream. It was great to see you all here. The questions help. I'll try to do a better job in the future of checking questions as I go, but we have a lot to cover. And I hope everybody has an amazing rest of your day, a great weekend. Hop in Discord if you have questions, story questions, and forum questions. Help spread the word for the channel. It's really beneficial. And I will see you all on the next one. Take it easy.